Welcome back to another episode of Diet Rebellion. Today, I am joined by Dr. Marc Morris, the first doctor we've had on the show. Very honored by that. Marc's just a cool guy. He's a highly experienced nutrition coach and educator with over 10 years of online coaching experience, and throughout our conversation, you're going to tell just how experienced he is. His deep passion for health and fitness has taken him from competing and coaching at the powerlifting world championships to teaching university-level courses on macronutrients and metabolism. In today's conversation, we talk about everything from somebody first starting out and getting results, how to do that, and then evolving into imagining that they've just gotten their final result and they know how to keep it successfully, and now they want to help others do the same. So how does somebody that has completed their transformation start transforming from client to coach? In today's episode, we learn exactly how to do that and how Dr. Marc Morris can help you do that. It's a really interesting conversation, both in physical health, mental health, and business success. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Diet Rebellion, the podcast that's here to help you break free from the chains of dieting and finally take control of your health, strength, and confidence. I'm Joe Hoye, your host and the founder of Diet Detox. After transforming the lives of thousands of women over 40 who have been trapped in the endless diet cycle, I'm here to show you a new way. One that focuses on eating for your body's needs, restoring your metabolism, and rebuilding your strength for life. Get ready for real, no bullshit conversations, expert insights, and actionable strategies that empower you to live diet-free and thrive. It's time to stop restricting and start rebuilding. Join the rebellion. Your journey starts now. Dr. Marc Morris, dude, you're the first doctor we've had on the show. It's an honor. How are you?
Amazing. I'm honored to be the first one. That pumps me up. That's really, really good.
Awesome. So I just asked you less than 5 minutes ago, but the audience didn't hear it. So how did you get your doctorate?
Yeah, so my PhD is in human nutrition, and as we were saying, I went through, the typical academic journey of like research and a thesis and all those things. But I think throughout that process, I knew I wanted to coach and work with individuals and write books and put my knowledge out there in an entrepreneurial capacity. And in my own spirit, the best way I knew to help people. So I always kind of thought of that's where I was going to be in a coaching business and that kind of stuff. And I think I remember I did my undergrad in chemistry and didn't really love it. I kind of was like I was science minded, wanted to go into that type of stuff. Maybe I was going to be a teacher and those type of things. And that just wasn't really, I went through it, but it wasn't really super captivating to me. But I remember in 2006 going to a seminar with John Berardi of this is before precision nutrition, and hearing him talk about his research. And at the time he was developing the Surge product from Testosterone Nation. I don't know if you ever remember any of those supplements or anything like that. It was just like a post-workout shake kind of thing. And I remember just being I was a gym rat at the time and thinking how do I do this stuff? This is what I want. I want to work with others, that kind of stuff. At the time, coaching really wasn't as popular. I think you'd read things and try to apply it for yourself, but no one was really helping you. There wasn't the option to do that kind of stuff. But just through that was okay, well, if people are doing this and they're in nutrition and there's a way for me to research this stuff and do grad school and those type of things, I'll go down that path. And then from there, I was just more or less hooked, but always with the intent of got to get back to helping people and individuals and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of where coaching came from.
I love that. And so how long ago was that?
I graduated in 2015 with my PhD, and undergrad was 2009. And I've been just more or less researching, applying, doing all the things, coaching throughout that period in different capacities.
Yeah, man, I remember that time period very well because that's when I was getting into fitness myself. So 2009, I was in ninth grade. And
there you go.
Man, there was no coaches for, I shouldn't say no, but there was way less coaches for the everyday person. And a lot of times what I would find is there was coaches for competitors, right? Bodybuilding,
totally.
physique, bikini. And so I think ninth grade, 2009, when you first got into this is when I hired my first coach. And she was a bodybuilding coach. So I got this bodybuilding plan of chicken, rice, broccoli, sweet potato.
Meal 1 through 6 with a standard meal plan and pretty much I wouldn't even say cookie cutter. It was just a thing that was passed along, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I was well, this doesn't work for me. But I took the foundation of it and I tweaked it to something that did. And I think that's what, through a couple other things, formed my trajectory into this path of my life. But I'm curious, if you know, because you kind of made the face or whatever it was when I said that, if you know that that doesn't work for most people, what do you find is like the foundational principles that work for the everyday person?
Yeah, I think personally, I feel like science and the evidence-based community like has done so much for nutrition and fitness, especially for like the everyday person, right? Like we have a better sense of what truly matters and what's most important to focus on and what doesn't need as much of our attention. So that's kind of it laid the path for a lot of my coaching philosophy and approach. But at the same time, sometimes it almost gets like too like none of this matters or like it's hard to focus on. So I like to strike that balance between like, okay, well, how do we actually apply this stuff and kind of go from there? The way we teach it to coaches and what I've personally been able to do is that like there's two main things going on: the structure of which someone needs to do, and that comes down to like energy balance and macronutrient intake and the checks and balances around what from someone's nutrition influences their body composition, athletic performance, and overall health. That's kind of like what should work. And then on the flip side is from a behavioral standpoint, it's like, okay, what will actually work in terms of what they'll be able to apply, consistently do, and how can a coach help remove the barriers from doing those things to do it? So it's almost like that's the habit driven part. And we teach it in terms of like you need structure and habits. And I think a lot of educational approaches usually only like focus on one or the other and go too far down that path. If you think about conventional, like usually have a bunch of textbooks around, right? It's like, hey, this is someone's energy expenditure. That's how many calories they need to ingest. Go do it, right? Like the theoretical sense of it. And it's like, well, that doesn't really teach you how to apply that kind of stuff. Or, what happens when things need to be adjusted or changed. And there's a difference between what someone should be eating and what they actually eat, and there's a discrepancy and stuff. It's like that's where coaches come in, and I think you need both of those things. So we like to teach a foundation around, okay, if someone wants a body composition goal, they'd be remiss to not focus on the amount of energy they're consuming and where that energy comes from in their diet through enough protein and a balance of macronutrients. But from there it's like, okay, well, how do we actually do it in a way that allows them to stick to it?
Man, I love it. You just said two words that I was going to draw a connection to immediately, which is education and application. And I think that there's such a big gap between those two things, right? Like you just said, the science-based people from years ago and even today have done so much for us. But at the same time, like the everyday person has so much shit going on in their life that they don't have time to sit down and read the textbooks and take the education and turn it into application. And so we do need application. We do need it to be easy, and that's tough. So I think that that's where coaches do come in. And I'm so glad that you've been so successful in your own career to really like, hey, I noticed this gap. I'm aware of it. I'm good at bridging the gap. And now I'm going to start teaching other coaches how to do it. What do you think made it so easy for you personally to communicate to your clients of like, guys, this is the education, this is what's real, but here's how you're going to apply it to your life? Like, how did you do that?
I think it's just a combination of having number one, like a science-based background and going through those steps and kind of being, I wouldn't the thing about science that makes it important is that at times you're skeptical and looking for the truth and like a bit critical of things, as well as like I've lived this life, right? Like I've done all the things. My first like bodybuilding prep in 2012, like I had a laptop out tracking my food with like a spreadsheet, like before like the apps were popular, right? Like I did, like I like my wife, who's my girlfriend at the time, like bless her heart, she like at the dinner table doing that stuff and like living those things, and now it's like much easier and more practical and all that stuff, but like it's a combination of like what actually works and going through that stuff and really thinking about what's the most important thing here and putting some priority on the things that matter the most, and then from there just like living it out and putting myself in the client's shoes because I've done all this stuff. And I think when you can frame it out that way, you just have a better sense of what people need to be doing and how you're connected to that stuff and kind of go from there. So it's like, okay, it's somewhat is easier to teach because I've done nothing else other than focus on the stuff, think about it and how to deliver it and communicate it in a way that people can understand. So just going about it that way.
Yeah, man, I think that that's what makes a good coach so valuable is that most of them came from something they didn't love and transformed into something they're proud of or something that at least helps them day to day. And a lot of times, I resonate with what you said. A lot of times we did it in ways that initially sucked and
Mhm.
sometimes didn't work. And we figured it out the hard way. And so for me, I think that's why I became a coach because I was like, well, that sucked. I don't want anybody to experience that. And so I'm
Totally.
gonna I'm gonna help them overcome this piece of their journey way faster. And then I come to the next roadblock. I'm like, well, shit, the way I did that sucked too. And now I know how to do it easier. And so we draw these connections through real life experience and learn how to help people get there faster, which is
Without a doubt. Yeah.
amazing.
I think at times we are afraid of using the word shortcut, but in a lot of ways, like you can just speed up that process for someone, and that's truly valuable, right? The more time you spend not figuring something out, the less likely you are to be able to do it. And that's where coaches come in. And when people can kind of start to see that in their own lives, it's almost just like this addictive process, right? Where it's like, oh man, I can put people will help me and I can pay them to do this stuff. And it's time is my most valuable asset. And then from there, I just things go quicker. And it's like one of those things where it really snowballs from that point.
Yep, I love it. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we need to define shortcut, right? Like, is there a magic diet out there that's going to help you shortcut? No. But there is a coach that is going to help you avoid all the shit that they struggled with. And that's a massive shortcut.
Yeah, without a
Um,
doubt. Yeah.
Going back
Yeah.
to what you said before, science-based, there's a big like controversy in the industry. And I'm going to use Lane for an example, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times Lane will be like, guys, this is all science, nothing else. It's calories in versus calories out. But so many times I'll have ladies come to me, and I bring this up to you because like you're the metabolism king. You're gonna get this. They'll come to me and they're eating 800 calories a day, 1,000
Mhm.
calories a day, and they're not losing weight. But science shows that number one, nobody has a TDEE of 800 calories a day. It's always usually double. Science also shows that if you're eating under that maintenance calories, you should be losing weight. So what do you think gives there? What's the explanation to that?
Well, yeah, this kind of comes back to like the theory of what should work and then what is actually working. And there's obviously we have tons of in that environment when someone's actually closely tracking those things, it's different than when we talk about in research where people are like underreporting by 30 to 40%, but
Right.
they're not actually like maybe they're just like subjectively describing it versus like truly tracking. And there's going to be scenarios I've experienced it, you've experienced where people are like, no, like this is literally what I ate. I tracked it. I've weighed things. Like it is relatively low. I wouldn't say relatively low. It's low. I think at times, I mean, usually the simplest answer is the correct one where it's like, hey, they don't do that for long enough to truly, you
Mm-hmm.
know, be in a long-term deficit. They do it for maybe weeks and not months because it's very tough to do and difficult to do. And then their energy wanes and then they find themselves in a, different eating environment or a social eating environment and then just go overboard. So there's some ups and downs around that type of stuff. Or, I mean, even if they are pretty close to it, they are like, there's just discrepancies in things, right? To me, it's almost like what someone should be eating and what they're actually eating are like apples and oranges around describing it, right? Where it's like, it's just human nature to report something that you feel like someone wants to see or that you should be doing or that kind of stuff. So all that stuff is baked into things. And then from there, outside of that, it's like someone's metabolism isn't going to like crash at that level, but they're not going to be burning many calories outside of the other things that add into that stuff too. So there's obviously big drops within, spontaneous physical movement or NEAT. They're just less likely to do that stuff. And I just don't think they don't do it for long enough for it to be something that is like truly the reason or the scapegoat would be the biggest thing, I would say, in that situation. So that's kind of like the simplest answer to that stuff. Now, the flip side is that when we think of it with science, like we report this stuff and talk about ranges and talk about averages, but humans are, they're data points on a range of things, right? So there are going to be outliers. There are going to be things where situations don't just work with people. There's going to be a psychological component of stuff where, if someone doesn't feel like something's going to work for them, it probably won't
Mm-hmm.
because of the mentality of the effort they're going to put into those things. That doesn't make them a bad person or something, but I've just seen it time and time again. I used to be a big believer in like high days and low days and calorie cycling and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And then kind of moved away from that because I just realized it didn't matter all that much because, days are long and if we're constantly eating and that kind of stuff and have like a baseline level of food, that's enough for the most part. It doesn't make all that sense. But I've got clients come to me that are like, I need to calorie cycle and I need to do this. This is what I'm doing. And we try it my like quote unquote my way first and it doesn't work out as well as we thought it would. And then switch to something that they feel like is going to work. And it's like, meh. Like, I'm like, oh man, okay. Well, there's some belief into this stuff as well. Cause that stuff, but like really plays into things. So that would be the biggest thing around. Yes, there's all of that stuff, as well as like, the dieting process, and someone's nutrition can impact, some of those other variables that influence this entire process, like their hormones. I know you're
Mm.
big into women's health and that kind of stuff. So it's like there's things that don't necessarily make it impossible, but will definitely work against them as well. I mean, the biggest thing, and that kind of all plays into that. So it's like just the biggest thing is, I don't know, simplest answer, maybe they're truly not doing that or not doing it long enough, as well as there's always going to be outliers that we just kind of got to treat on a case by case.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You nailed it. I'm curious, like you mentioned, I've worked with women 40 plus for quite a while. You've been
Yeah.
coaching for over a decade now. Like, who have you spent the most time helping?
I would say like 2014 to 2018, I was really big into powerlifting and like the international scene and coaching. So I spent a lot of time with weight class sports and like 2 hour weigh-ins and that kind of stuff, and kind of carved out, I would say, a niche within that, in terms of I was one of the only people doing like the process of like powerlifting coaching, nutrition coaching, and can coach you right on the platform from start to finish type stuff. So I had done a lot of that. I wrote a book on weight class sports in 2017 called The Way of the Weigh-In. So I spent a large chunk of time doing that type of stuff.
I love it. Do you find that kind of these specialties of coaching of weight class sports apply or have applications to Gen Pop?
Yeah, I think, well, the way we teach the weight class stuff is that, like, I mean, near the end of certifying for a weigh-in, it like is almost like the complete opposite of conventional dieting, right? It's like long term, we're thinking of, if we want to adjust your body composition, we need to focus on energy balance and macronutrients and that type of stuff. The closer you get, it's the complete opposite. It's like how much physical food is in your body and water balance, stuff that's not really calorie driven. It's like weight driven and stuff. So I don't know. I think the biggest thing is the more control I have over variables that like matter the most, which are different in both of those phases, the more I can just coach people and explain those things and explain it in ways that like they get bought in and do this stuff. So I think to me, it's almost like I've just put myself in different situations where I got to really figure out the priority and the context of things relatively quickly to make sure that people are doing the stuff that matters. Because if you can't get them to do that stuff, they're not going to get the best results. And therefore it's like all this stuff is results-based business, right? So if you can't do that, you're just kind of the nice coach that people like, but ultimately don't pay forever because you can't deliver on those things.
Yeah, I mean, people show up because they want to change something in their life. Like they're not paying you to be their friend.
Nope.
What do you think are the variables that matter most for just the everyday person?
I think structure is the biggest thing. Like, I think a lot of times people know what healthy eating looks like. They just don't know how to do it in a way that they can stick with, are aware of, or can adjust in terms of like what they've previously done and what they're doing on a daily basis. So that would be the first thing. And then within that structure, it's like definitely eating enough protein is probably like, if there's one tip strategy for 98% of clients, it's like if you eat enough protein, a lot of the other stuff takes care of itself. Be it like you're more full now, you're in a position to like put on muscle or maintain muscle. It displaces out other food that you typically like wouldn't eat because there's now an emphasis on like, whole foods and that kind of stuff. So it's like that would be, within that stuff, most people are, have a leg up and have a good start. And then from there, just the rest is more or less like dictated on preference and what you like and enjoy to eat to fill up the remaining amount of food and that kind of stuff. But I think if people do that, like having some structure, something that they start to understand and can stick to, and then within that, eat enough protein, like good things happen most of the time.
Hey, it's your host, Joe Hoye, and we're going to get back to the podcast in just 1 second. But really quickly, I wanted to tell you about a new challenge that I just launched all around fat loss, doing it sustainably, and most importantly, teaching you to keep the weight off for the rest of your life simply. Now, in this challenge, there's no calorie counting, there's no food locking. I am personally going to build you your food and fitness programs as you sign up for the program, so that as you enter inside of the 4-week coaching program with me, you have zero guesswork in terms of, are you doing the right things for food and fitness, and are you going to lose weight when you jump on the scale at the end of the week? All of those questions have been answered for you. I guarantee your progress. And the reason I did that is because we needed to simplify the food and fitness aspect so that you can now start focusing on the more important thing, the thing that's going to keep weight loss off forever. you, the person you are, your identity, your thoughts, behaviors, and actions that you make every single day that are either going to make or break your success long term. So if you're interested in that, go to the show notes, click on the very first link called reshape.hoyfit.com, and I'll see you in the next challenge. Now let's get back to the show. Completely agree. Protein and water is going to solve a whole lot of issues. But the thing is, like, everybody's different. I'm assuming you're kind of like me. You and I work from home. I just work in my living room that I've converted to an office. Some people drive an hour each way to work. Some people work on a construction site. So structure for every single person is going to be completely different. Is there any rule that you think fits across the board, or is structure just like a person to person basis?
Well, what I like the most about like, setting flexible dieting targets and like daily totals and that kind of stuff is it allows you to like, no matter who the individual is, those targets aren't going to be the same, but the process of tracking towards them and stuff is similar, and everyone's numbers will be different, but we can get a sense of controlling that stuff, and that part is helpful. But I think within that stuff, I think what most people need to do, and this is maybe where coaches tend to go wrong, is that, and clients think this way too, is like they got to like start over or completely throw everything out in terms of their habits and the stuff that they've done in the past, when in reality it's like, no, let's get a sense of what you're doing now, and from that point add more protein in when it's convenient, add more like fruits and vegetables and less processed foods, and build some stuff around that, because most people aren't that far off. They know what they need to be doing. They just need to be doing it more consistently, and it's building some structure within what they're already doing. And it's not just like throwing everything out. And I know like I'm sure you've had clients where it's like, okay, that sounds great, but I'm going to start Monday because I got to get all new groceries. And it's like, no, like, first of all, plans got to be set up based on what they're closer to what they're currently doing, on the way to where they should be, not just dramatically different, which is what a lot of coaches do as well. A lot of clients are expecting.
Yeah, I love it. And so I was actually just going to start going that way. Is, like I said, you've coached people inside of nutrition, creating change in their life for the past 10 years or more. Now you're kind of transitioning to helping coaches create those outcomes for their clients. And so realistically, you're starting to create more impact, right? Because before you were helping one person at a time. Now you're helping one person that might have a roster of 30, 60, 100 clients.
Exactly.
And so what are you finding across the board that works for coaches to impact their clients?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the biggest thing being, I think a lot of times, and maybe there's like I don't know, a belief around like being so client centered that like you need to fit the actual, like fit your plan, your correspondence to the individual each and every time. And I think a lot of times that gets people being like, well, I do habits with this person, and this person wants to follow a meal plan, and this one is a bit more like this, this client wants to start carnivore and that kind of stuff. And you're kind of like just bending the knee to like every whim that they have. And from that point, it makes it like really hard to stay organized. Two, it makes it really tough for you to start being repeatable in terms of the things that you're doing and become a good coach, because it's really tough to assess patterns and get some experience and build confidence through that stuff. So to me, it's like every client is different, but most groups of clients are pretty similar. So if you can do things similarly with all of your clients and then start adjusting things on a case by case basis. So that means like checking in with them all the same way, building some, processes around that type of stuff. The correspondence being like regular but recurring, and building some expectations around that type of stuff. Like we do like our check-in process, and what we teach, we call it the hybrid check-in. It's like standard check-in form that a client will fill out to give us subjective information. They'll fill out a tracking sheet to give us the objective stuff in terms of how things actually went, calories, macronutrients on a weekly basis. That the check-in process is prompted by the client filling out the form, but then our coaches respond like using Loom and doing like a 5 to 7 minute voiceover with how things are going, what needs to be adjusted, and kind of going from there. And that's like they start to build the check-in process. They do that stuff with each and every one of their clients, because they'll find if they don't do that stuff, one client's like, oh, can we get on a call? Can we do this? I don't want to do it on this day. It's all over the place, and they're stuck with like a nutrition coaching hobby that allows them to work with 4 clients, but it's spread out over the course of the week, and they have no clue how they'll grow their business or take on more clients or any of those things. So to me, it's like repeatability is the biggest thing. It's like doing things similarly.
That's the pattern I was seeing is like, it needs to be scalable. It needs to be repeatable. It needs to be systemized. And I love it, man. Like that's exactly what we do is, and I did this from a place of like, how many people can I help in a massive way while not creating chaos inside the business, right? Because ultimately that's going to make it easier for my coaches to pay attention to what matters, which is client results. And then
Mhm.
everything else on the back end runs itself. So that's awesome. I'm curious who you're helping for coaches. Like, is it people that already have an established business, people that kind of like what you said, they have a hobby. It's a nutrition hobby. Maybe they have 4 clients. Like, where do they come in and work with you?
Yeah, our main certification program, like I would love it to be the one avatar, but there's two main people that we're helping. It's someone with a personal transformation story that would love to help
Yeah.
others. They just don't know what that would look like and have the confidence to deliver that stuff. So we give them the right science, the strategies, the tools, and that kind of stuff, as well as like personal trainers and fitness professionals that just aren't addressing the nutrition side of things. They know why it's important. Maybe they've done a basic certification, but they're just not emphasizing it. They're the kind of people that are like, they're giving their clients tips within between sets and stuff. And we all know that like that's just not the right scenario for
Yeah.
those type of things. So we're helping those people, but the main program is essentially like focusing on the right science, giving you the right systems so you can take on 1 to 5 clients in a way that'll allow you to take that next step and bridge that next step because it is organized and is efficient and you're learning some marketing principles around how to actually get these clients and do that type of stuff as well.
Man, I love that. I love your first avatar. And I don't know if you like subconsciously alluded to it before or if I just picked up on a pattern, but that's where I was hoping you were going to say. It's like, hey, I've coached this person to a transformation so big that again, they realized what I realized 10 years ago, where it's like, wow, I did all these things wrong. I worked with a coach. He helped me shortcut this process. And I don't ever want somebody to experience this again. So I'm going to become a coach and I'm going to be the next generation. And I love
Mhm.
that now you're taking those people and raising them up. So if that's somebody, right? And so I know personally, like I've been coaching for 7 years. I've created multiple coaches inside my business that are doing the same thing. Where do they start? Like, where does somebody that has their own transformation start to help other people?
Well, I think there's no reason why they can't start right away if they feel
Yeah.
confident enough to be like, I can help people with these type of things. I think the issue is a lot of times that people will see their results in their own sort of social circles and ask them, what they did, can I do the same thing and that type of stuff. And they make the effort to try to help them and it doesn't really work out or it doesn't take off because they don't have a coaching system. They're kind of just giving advice. Maybe those people, they don't have the confidence to charge those people, so they're not all that bought in. So to me, it's almost like going down the path of making some sort of investment to make it more official, professional. You put the emphasis on it because that's what's going to allow it to take off. I think a lot of times the things that we want people to do, it's like much easier to do when we're more bought in and committed and all those things. So it's like finding some step to make it more official. And by that, I mean, it's like, that doesn't mean having to get a professional website or any of those things, but it's like having a coaching process where it's like, and it can be kind of like bootstrapped. And we teach it that way, where it's like, you need an application form. You need a place where people can go to tell you what's going on. You need a consistent way to respond in a process to take them from curious and turn them into paying clients. We teach that through, we call it the free nutrition report, where it's like doing an assessment with someone on the front end before they start coaching. So you can show them the power of coaching
Yeah.
and how like you can point things out to people and how it's different than an ebook or a course or like a supplement or something like that. And it starts to show them the power of coaching. And then from there, having a standardized coaching process and that type of stuff. And I think going through that stuff, people could probably do that on their own, but they're going to build way more confidence, by following what someone else has done step by step and getting a sense of, oh, this is why you do that. And this is why it's important and kind of going from there. Those are some of those first steps. But I think the biggest thing being building that stuff out and then doing it on people and actually coaching them is what's going to allow them to say, hey, I can actually do this. This is this can be profitable. This can be helpful. This falls in line with, me being able to help people. And that's the best of every world.
Look, I mean, it's the same conversation that we just had, what, 20 minutes ago, where we figured it out on our own from a physical transformation in our body. Now
Mhm.
we figured it out on our own from a business aspect. And it's like, well, if this person was a client, they've already invested in coaching and seen the power of it. So obviously it's going to make sense that they should see the power of investing in another dimension of their life and shortcutting that success. I love it. The other thing I heard is people put way too much like value in the wrong things. I need this big fancy website and then I'm going to get all the clients. Like, no, you need attention. You need a way to prove your value to clients. And then you need a way to create results to the people you prove value to. And there you go. Now you have a small coaching business that you can probably scale.
Exactly. And that's how it all starts, is taking from there. And I don't know, it's just like anything else where you start to like working with people and that type of stuff, you start to see patterns around, okay, everyone has their own skills and strengths and that kind of stuff. But usually there's like a bottleneck or a weakness around what they need to be doing. Attention is a good one, right? There's people where it's like, okay, there's some people that are really good at getting attention and telling their story, but there's nothing that happens after on the back end. It's like, okay, well then you need more, we need a more formal coaching system and that type of stuff. There's other people that it's like, okay, I know exactly what I need to do and how I could help people, but I have no idea where these people will come from. It's like, okay, it's a marketing problem. It's an attention problem and that kind of stuff and go from there. It's like, hey, I can get people's attention, but I have no idea how to get them results. It's like, well, maybe you're not applying the right science. Maybe you're not focusing on the things that matter the most in a repeatable capacity. So it's just kind of like walking them through that stuff. And once you've coached enough people, you can pick up on these things around. It's like, that's what I'm hearing.
Yep.
This is what you need to do.
I love it, man. That's incredible. So it's been a great journey for you, right? Constant evolution of I'm going to help me, I'm going to help others, and then I'm going to help others that can help others. Good for you.
Thanks,
If
man.
somebody wants to spend time with you, if they want to learn how to go from client to coach or just spend some time with you, where can they do that?
There's a few good ways. The first one being, and the thing we probably put the most effort in or most present on, is the YouTube channel. Dr. Marc Method on YouTube. I'll pass you along the links and that kind of stuff. We make 2 to 3 high quality, like full length videos every week on the nutrition coaching process, be it the science, how to coach, case studies, business based stuff. That's where we're the most present. Our program is currently actually shut down because we're revamping everything, but it'll be up and back ready to take on a new cohort of students for the springtime. So like probably end of April, early May, that type of stuff. We're changing some things to make it fall in line with a bigger vision. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much and best of luck.
Yeah, you bet. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.